Those effing C words. Change and confidence, child. 2 words that are so scary they may as well be curse words. Let's talk about it. On this podcast, we'll share our stories about hardship and starting over, making professional pivots, ending relationships and friendships, and having the confidence to navigate change. These are real stories and real people from my one-on-one coaching sessions and interviews that will keep us inspired or remind us that things could be worse. So what you hear are the truths, traumas, and testimonies that push us to become the solution instead of just waiting for one. I'm Marcia Cork, the Change Coach, and this is Ooh, Those Effing C Words. Happy Friday, MCs. Welcome back to another episode of Ooh, Those Effing C Words. It's been a long time since you've heard that trailer, hasn't it? Well, that was intentional. I had to set the mood for this conversation. So for the past few weeks, we've been having some great conversations around change and confidence as they relate to job hunting and entrepreneurship, just having these conversations about the career pivot. But I played that intro to remind you that when we talk about the C words, that's across all areas of our lives. That includes changes in our relationships and in our friendships as well. A few weeks ago, I told you I had this juicy relationship episode planned, and here it is. Finally, we are talking change after divorce or separation this week. And I'm having a panel conversation today. I'm calling them the Confidantes. Hopefully you see what I did there. So this is going to be a panel conversation, 3 women and myself, who are all on the other side of divorce or separation. And here's the thing, really ain't nothing new under the sun. We've all heard that saying, but when we're going through divorce and separation, it feels like we're the only ones going through that, right? So wherever you are in divorce, separation, if you're in it or alongside it, whether you're actually experiencing it yourself, or if you're the friend, the confidant, the support system for someone who is, my goal is to just have relatable examples to look to. I want to introduce some topics and some considerations that, we don't always think about. Things like, have you considered therapy before exiting the relationship? Even if it's not couples counseling, but therapy for yourself to navigate what life after divorce or separation is going to look like. What are you doing to get to know yourself before you exit the relationship? What did you lose in your marriage that you're trying to get back? Are you prepared to answer the questions that, friends and family may start to ask you about your situation? Do you know how to make yourself happy? What are you looking forward to? What are you most afraid of? All those types of things that we talk about, or the voices in our head have full conversations about, but we don't get to really share with anyone because we feel that isolation, or we don't feel like anyone else is experiencing and can relate to what we're experiencing. So those are the types of conversations that I want to have. What are some things other than relationships that bring you happiness? Do you have to be in a relationship? Can you lean into friendships instead? You're going to hear a lot of these things come up in this conversation. And I can't say that we'll touch on all of these things today because it's one episode and I'm trying not to keep these episodes too long. So we may not touch on it all today, but I can promise you that you can expect more conversations like this. So let's jump into today's episode with a few of my friends, the Confidantes, as we discuss being changed ever after, life after divorce or separation.
In marriages, we get so caught up in what society says that we're supposed to do in a marriage, as opposed to, okay, what do we really want?
Ladies, The reason why I have you all here is because we represent four different outcomes, four different scenarios, four different ways that separation and divorce could go. So I love this conversation because I can represent separation, my husband and I being separated for nearly 2 years and then reuniting. But then some of you have, well, all of you have gone on to be divorced, but you have different levels of interaction with your exes. Tiffany, you've remarried, so everyone has a different outcome. So I think we'll be able to lend a lot of different perspectives to the conversation and look at our scenarios through different lenses. So 4 stories that can represent a variety of different people and a variety of different situations. I will start with Bailey, since you're in the upper right-hand corner. Introduce yourself and tell me where you all stand today.
Hi, my name is Bailey. I'm actually have been divorced going on 5 years now. We co-parent. We have a great co-parenting relationship. We have a son together. And I'm currently still single. I had been in a 2-year relationship, but now I'm single. I'm on my Christian walk.
Okay.
It hasn't been easy.
Uh-huh.
But this go around, I am definitely looking for my person, and it's more about compatibility, companionship, and forever after.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to circle back to that. Ask, would you get married again? So,
Absolutely, that's what I'm looking to do.
okay.
Absolutely,
All
yes.
right. Tiffany, introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, I'm Tiffany. I am on my second marriage. It will be 6 years this September. I remarried 10 years after I was divorced. So I got married young, can't you tell? Although this is a podcast, I guess they can't see the youthful glow. But yes, it took 10 years for me to find the one.
I
So
didn't realize it was 10 years.
it was 10 years. Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I hope mine isn't that long, girl. Please,
Girl,
Lord Jesus.
you know what it's like out there in them single streets.
It's a
Ooh,
mess. It's a
ooh,
mess.
Right.
it's a whole mess.
And that
Mhm.
brings us to Renee, who is currently in these single streets as well. So,
Oh my goodness. Hello, my name is Renee. I guess the aspect that I'm representing is that my ex-husband and I are wonderful co-parents. We are the best, well, I'll say the best of friends. I mean, might sound a little corny, but we have a better relationship now, I feel like, than we did before. We communicate a lot more. So that's, I guess, my angle. We've
mhm.
been divorced. I would say we're going on 2 years, separated for 2 years and then divorced for 2 years. We actually had a virtual divorce. Um, so yeah, like we have a great relationship, and I guess that's something to consider when you're looking into divorce, is what's going to be the outcome
Right.
afterwards. So
Right. All right. So let's talk about that. So let's talk about first making the decision, because I think that's where probably a lot of people are going to be. And
hmm
so what is it that goes into your decision, and how long did it take for you to actually make the decision? When did you know it was time to leave, and what was that process like once you realized it was time to leave?
well, for me, I'm not sure if you're asking me, but for
Anybody,
me,
you can
it
jump in.
was okay. So for me, it wasn't even when I asked for a separation, I was actually asking for separation. I wasn't asking to get divorced. I just knew that something wasn't right. I felt like how I felt about him wasn't right. And during that time, this is when I went into counseling, and he also went into counseling. We went into counseling together, because this is a big decision. I wanted to understand why I was feeling this way. So I didn't really decide to get a divorce in the beginning.
It was more like this might be a break. We need a break from each other right now.
Yeah, exactly. I had a discussion with him, and we talked about it, and I said, well, I'm kind of feeling some kind of way, and I'm not sure why. And So I need time to kind of figure this out.
How long were you guys in therapy before you decided to go ahead and?
We were in therapy maybe 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tiffany, chime in. What was your process like when you realized you might want to make some changes?
So we actually were separated for 3 years before we actually got a divorce. And we just weren't making any progress. It was just stagnant. I mean, I think we were each doing our own thing. There wasn't consistent effort to reconcile.
Mm-hmm.
I think we may have done 2 or 3 potentially counseling sessions, just a handful of counseling. I did request that he do counseling on his own. He did not want to do that. I was dating. I think he was dating. So it was, at this point, it was kind of, I got to a point to where I was like, okay, we got to piss or get off the pot, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, let me just go ahead and get this done. And I think another thing that was occurring over that 3-month or 3-year window was that I was trying to handle the paperwork on my own. So I think we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I was under the impression that it would be an easy breezy process for me to just handle the paperwork and not so much. So that kind of dragged things out longer because so over the course of that 3 years, that was 3 years of me trying to do things, trying to be Matlock on my own and messing things up, So finally, I hired a lawyer and just got it all done. So that was what was happening over that 3-year window as well.
Okay. And I do want to talk about that process later for all of you, what the filing process is like. And I know that will vary. Tiffany and I talked about that ahead of time. That will vary state by state. But when you don't know where to start, at least all of you can, give some guidance on maybe what the first call is, maybe where the first step is. Bailey, chime in on your experience.
Well, y'all was going through separation. Your girl was like, hell to the nah. Because mine cheated. So it wasn't no, oh, well, let's see where this is going to go. Let's be separated for a couple of years. It was just like, nah, that's what we doing. Okay, I see you. So, I forgave him literally like, I think 2 weeks after I found out.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I forgave him. We were standing in the kitchen. I was like, hey, I forgive you. And it wasn't about him. It was about me. And I had made the decision that I wasn't going to be a bitter Betty, in this case, a bitter Bailey. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting at the dining room table and I was just like, you know what? I literally sat at the table and said, God is my source. And I released everything. My divorce was amicable, but in the state of Maryland, you have to be legally separated for a year if you have a kid before you can even file for divorce. Okay. So he had already moved out by this time. My son and I, we stayed in the house. We were going to move, obviously, after everything. We didn't even go to court. We did mediation. And I made sure I got a man because, men don't want another woman in their ear. But I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years. So that was another thing. So for me, now in my mid-40s, starting over with the kid in tow and walking away from my career for the most part, but for me, I'm gonna be honest with you, it was all about peace of mind. And I know women want to stay. Like I remember having girlfriends telling me, well, why don't you stay till you get yourself together? And I was like, I don't care if I gotta move back in with my parents. I was like, I need my peace of mind. Like this is crazy. I can't do this. But I will say at the end of the day, I got everything that I was entitled to. So I didn't end up on the other side struggling. So I thank God for that. And I tell women all the time, and I know, trust me, I know sometimes it's easier said than done because my ex was kind of mean-spirited at the beginning, because how people like misery likes company. So they get and start talking to people, people start getting in their ear. And I remember telling him, I was like, look, I'm not going to court. Like, I'm not getting a lawyer. You can get one if you want to, but you're essentially taking money out of our kid's mouth. So we end up going to mediation.
Mhm.
Everything that I had told him that needed to happen, because I did my research, he was like, well, he heard me, but he wasn't listening. So when we got into mediation, the mediator essentially told him everything I said. And so it was just a very smooth process. I'm grateful even to this day that we have a great co-parenting relationship. That's
Yeah.
not to say we don't have our differences, but again, if you want the best outcome, I always tell people, and this goes for men and women, pick your battles. If it's not going to make a difference a week from now, just keep it moving. Like, don't even comment on it. Don't even, it's just not necessary.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, for me, again, you all went through the separation process of, working things out. We did do counseling, but by the time we went to counseling, it was way too late. He had checked out, I had checked out.
Mhm.
I will say there was some part of me that wanted it to work out, because nobody wants their marriage to end. We were together for 13 years, so nobody wants that to end.
Yeah.
But when the writing is on the wall, I knew just by his demeanor, the behavior was going to continue. It wasn't something of remorse. It was like, yeah, I did it.
I got you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't even really I got caught, but he didn't have any remorse of, I'm not going to do this moving forward. Like, this is just what I'm doing at this point. It was,
Yeah.
more of the mentality.
Okay.
So there was no need, really. So it really wasn't anything to work out at that point,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. But yeah, so I will honestly say, because people ask, how long have you been divorced? My transition was so smooth. I have to actually mentally recall whenever someone asked me that question, where the separation ended and the divorce began,
Yeah.
because it was just that seamless. And unfortunately, most people don't experience that.
Yeah.
So I remain grateful, but I tell people a lot of that has to do with your state of mind as a person. Like, you can't control what the other person does, but you can control 100% how you respond.
Yeah.
And if
Yep.
you're responding negatively like them, that's just going to give them more ammo and feel more justified in continuing their behavior.
Yeah. So our process was also amicable and smooth to outsiders. So much so that people listening to this episode are probably going to learn for the first time that we were separated for close to 2 years. So we actually did one of those scenarios where you're together but separate, like living in the same house. Renee, you all did something similar, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
So in my case, when we decided to separate, like you, Bailey, I had been, I say an at-home mom because I was physically home, but I was really just teaching and consulting. So it was weekend and evening kind of work. So I'd done the same thing, put my career on hold. My money came in, but it wasn't consistent. And it definitely wasn't something I was going to just be able to live off on my own. So when I decided to go ahead and leave, I said, I'm just going to have to be on welfare. Like, that was the decision that I made. I was like, look, I'm not going to stay in a relationship because I can't afford to be single. And that's what I was willing to do. And he fought me tooth and nail. He's like, I don't want my children in poverty. So we're just going to, live together, but be separated. So we started separating our lives, but we still lived in the same household. So during that time, I was going to therapy so that I could prepare for what life would look like as a single person. Because he and I had been together since college, like right out of college. So I hadn't really, had any adult years on my own and living on my own. And so I went to therapy to just kind of navigate what that looked like. Um, and and then after a while, it just rolled off. So while I was going to therapy, I was telling her, we still get along. I still get up every morning and make his coffee. And she just sat there in disbelief because there wasn't any, I wasn't angry with him. I was at peace with where we were and the decision that I had made. And we just spent the next few months working towards separation. And it was very matter of fact. But then that's how we were separated as well. We continued to co-parent well enough. If we showed up at events together, people didn't even realize we were separated. We still may not have done vacations together. I don't really recall, but it can be peaceful when you make up your mind that you are just going to get along.
Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that was the same with me that before, like when we were separating, I mean, it was rocky in the beginning, but then it had gotten to the point where we were like, no, we're not going to do this. We actually had a conversation saying that we're not going to do this. We're better than this. And then when you have kids involved, like you can't be around your kids and have them seeing, chaos and arguments and all that stuff. Like we did get into one argument around my kids, and that was, I mean, to this day, my kids remember that. So that stuck with me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, these are some of the things that they remember. So we decided that we're going to be adult about this, because at the end of the day, when you have kids, you still have to deal with that person regardless for the rest of your life. Like
Yeah.
regardless of, divorce, you're still connected to that person. So let's try to make the most of this.
Yeah.
And really talk. After the separation, we've become closer, I feel like. But I mean, sometimes that happens. I mean, I know it's not true with everybody, and I know, speaking to what Bailey said, like my separation and divorce was really smooth too. Now, mind you, we got divorced like in the early days of COVID, so everything was virtual. Um, but we did do the mediator, and did all that stuff. Um, but we really just kind of sat down and said, this is what we want. This is how it's going to happen. And yeah, so that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay. So Tiffany, you jumped right into the 3-year separation. What was the process like for deciding that you wanted to leave and making the decision?
Well, it was very abrupt. So, unlike you guys, mine was not smooth at all. It
Okay.
came at the worst time of my life. My mother had just passed away suddenly, and my marriage unexpectedly, abruptly started to implode unexpectedly. So, yeah, I don't have a clean way to explain how or why that happened. It's
Mm,
too loaded to get into on our brief podcast right now.
okay.
So yeah, I didn't leave the house. He left, I guess, at my insistence, if you will.
Okay.
I've heard older women say, oh, a lady should never leave her home. Take from that, if you will. That wasn't necessarily what my position or what my goal was, but that's how it unfolded for us.
Okay.
And yeah, I wasn't, and I guess I should add, as part of that 3-year time frame, I honestly wasn't in the state of mind. It like I said, it happened so quickly. I was actively grieving. So of course, having just losing my mother, I was depressed.
Mm,
We had just moved to this area, so there was just so much going on. So that was another factor that kind of delayed everything. I needed to get my feet under me.
yeah.
I needed to
Mhm.
breathe. I needed to think. I needed to, just kind of get my head around everything that was going on. So
Yeah.
that's, I guess, one part of it.
Yeah.
I don't even know that if there was like a realization. It was more like a bam. You know what I mean? Right. It wasn't like a, oh my God, what's happening? Oh, I think, you know what I mean? It was just like I slipped and fell in the hole, and you look up and be like, this shit is really happening. Like, I didn't have no choice but to, I was kind of force fed it, if you
Yeah.
will. Like it was
Probably easier. I mean, I definitely can't say easier, but it probably forces you to jump into your next chapter a little sooner. Whereas for us, it's like we were on the decline for about 2 years before I finally made that decision. So there were times when, we're living in the house and not speaking to each other.
I think
You
I
know,
would rather that. Well, okay. I think I don't I'll put it like this. I think I would rather to not have to deal with two life-changing events at once. So
Okay.
I don't know
Yeah.
if the ripping the band-aid off is easier
Yeah.
as, say, letting it drag on for 2 years, but anything is easier than the death of a parent and a separation at the same time. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
But can I ask you a question now?
Mm-hmm.
I hear you, and I can tell that it affected you. But do you find yourself now? Because I always say, I mean, they say, what don't kill you makes you stronger.
Mm.
And nobody's trying to hear all that when you're going through it. Let's just keep it 100.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm sure because you experience both of those life altering situations at the same time, when things come at you now, a lot of that stuff you probably just brush your shoulder off because
Oh,
you like,
bad girl. Ain't no doubt
yeah,
about
I
that.
heard you,
exactly,
I heard you say
exactly.
that before.
Yeah, and because you've experienced that, you like, you know what? If I can make it through that, this right here, this is small stuff right here. I'm
Yeah.
not even
Yeah.
sweating it. Yeah.
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 I mean, I definitely I realize my strength, like they say, you don't know what you made of until you've been through something.
Mhm.
But I still struggle. So I don't know. I guess at the end of the day, like I have that's not the end of the struggles. I have still have had to deal with some difficult things, and I still feel like those things have hurt deeply as well. But I guess I can still look back at it all and say that I've survived it all. Put it like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know, but I do give myself some pats on the back
Yeah.
for standing
Good.
strong through all of that, because people crumble from less. I do know that. I
Yeah.
have heard the stories
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the
And I
things
always
that
applaud you. Sorry to cut you off, but you mentioned it briefly earlier, but you also stayed here. So you and your husband have relocated here. And
right,
then you went through that with no village, you know.
right.
So that, I mean, I would have gone home immediately, you know, or back to where my friends are. If I now have to live
Yeah.
this single life, I'm going back to where my friends are. And you stayed.
Mhm.
That, and I
And
still don't.
truth be told, well, I mean, if it wasn't for Katrina, I might have went back, right? But it so happens that, so Katrina was in 2005, and then this happened in 2006. So New Orleans wasn't much to go back to at that time.
Gotcha.
So, it just was like, well, what am I going to go back to? Like the city was still devastated, right? And so, yeah, I toughed it out. I thugged it out here. I mean, maybe this is where God wanted me to be, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, because
Well,
now I have my village.
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to say that real quick. Like for me, when the separation occurred, like when I asked for it, again, I wasn't trying to get a divorce. I was asking for a separation because I was trying to figure this out. And then, like, during therapy and all that stuff, like something came up, and then that kind of pushed me to the other side of like, okay, and I looked at it, from a religious sense. I looked at it like, okay, God's like, look, I showed you this. Now what you
Mhm.
gonna do? I'm showing you this, so now you can make your decision. I mean, sometimes these things are shown to you and they do help you make that final decision, because it is hard in the beginning. There are going to be like moments, and even now, you know, because we get along, it's almost like I'm like, well, why do we get divorced? We get along so well. So I still kind of like think about that. Like, why are we not saying that? I mean, I can confidently say I don't want to get back with him, but from the outside looking in, you're like, well, wait a minute, y'all get along so well. And even I'm sure when people heard that we were separated, it was like, what? That was, people were like, because it's not like we were ever that couple that
Explosive.
looked miserable together, or were angry at each other, or beefing, or anything like that. So yeah, like it's one of the things I kind of think about now, and only because I think, because whenever you have kids involved, it's like it's like part of me has made, I mean, obviously I made the decision, but then there's always like, well, I wonder,
Well,
but
I tell you this, Renee. When you said you had your son heard you guys had one argument, I'm like, well, how y'all pull that off? One
yeah,
argument.
exactly. And that's, I mean, but then that also speaks to our marriage, and I'm not saying that from a good from a good stance. Like, it just kind of depends on, who, like in my case, I think he just wasn't one to really argue. And like we just really just never got into really big battles. Like it was like he was just very even keeled, and so yeah, that's why I think my kids were so kind of taken aback when they saw us arguing, because they've never ever seen that. Or maybe there were times when we did argue, maybe it's just they weren't around, but I know that particular instance, they had never seen that.
Yeah.
So I could see why they would be like, well, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But
Can't
I
even
can
imagine.
I
Because
can
it
relate
feels
to
like there
that.
are problems, but you're sweeping them under the rug. So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah, that's why I said,
you're
like, when
suppressing it
I
and then it
say that there
explodes.
weren't any arguments,
Yeah.
yeah, like, when I say there weren't any arguments, I'm not saying that from a good standpoint. Like, I'm not saying that we got along our entire marriage. We were together like 15 years, so maybe even longer than that. But I mean, as far as like dating and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like, there were things we didn't tackle, but that was, us, not really addressing what you're supposed to, address, I feel like, in a marriage.
Right.
Yeah, that was y'all cool because I literally think I am physically incapable of sweeping something under the rug. Like I think I would have a physical reaction. Like I might break out in hives or something. I don't know. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. We've had those conversations before, because I was also someone who would suppress. And I was saying, I need to say more. And Tiffany would be like, I need to say less.
But
All right. Well, listen, let's move on. I want to talk about the days following the decision to separate. What kind of support did you get from family and friends? Sometimes there's guilt or shame associated with your relationship declining. Like I said before, you feel like you're in isolation, that you're going through this, but no one else is. So as common as it is, you can still feel isolated and feel like this is very unique to you, that you're the only person going through this. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I didn't feel guilt and shame. I think as far as friends and family goes, they kind of are, they already knew because they were there with me when the process was, leading up. Like they already like, and it's funny because I'm like her, like we didn't argue and stuff. I remember his uncle saying one time, you two act more like brothers and sisters than you do husband and wife. So we were kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
coexisting and
yeah,
had more of a friendship versus the whole romantic, oh, I'm in love, or this is my husband, whatever.
Yeah.
So when everything, reached a head or turned, I think the masses found out because I ended up doing a video. It was 2016. You probably still find it on Facebook. I did a video where I said I came on here to talk about the release of my book, but I feel it to talk about what had been going on. I mean, I didn't go into deep detail, and I got a lot of that's what I was telling Tiffany. You don't realize your story is a testimony, especially on social media, because everybody sees people's lives being perfect.
Perfect. Yep.
And when you have someone that's there being vulnerable and transparent, and it's like, wow, like even if they weren't going through what I was going through, they were going through something in life. And just to see that, and so, not that misery loves company, but to see that, wow, this is a human, they're going through something just like I'm going through something. That's what you call the human connection,
Yeah.
And so I would say that's when the masses found out. I wasn't ashamed, embarrassed, because I didn't do anything wrong. at the end of the day. I mean, everybody plays their part, don't get it. I'm not a perfect person by no means, but I'm not the one who broke the vows. I'm not the one who, did wrong towards the relationship. So at the end of the day, heck, things don't work out. But I will say I found myself being that female that I said I would never be, as far as
Uh-oh.
focusing so much on my marriage and my kids, that I really lost a sense of who I was.
Yeah.
And when Tiffany said when it was over, she just needed a moment to breathe, I wish I had done that. Like, I don't care who you are. If you're going through a divorce or if you're getting out of any type of long-term situation,
Yeah.
it is never, and I know they say never, but I'm here to say it. It is never a good idea to jump into another relationship, because you don't know who you are at that point.
Yeah.
And then I had jumped into a 2-year relationship, and after that, I literally made a conscious decision. I said, you know what, B, you're not gonna date for at least a whole year. I didn't talk to anybody on the phone. I didn't go out on any dates. I didn't do any of that. And I found out so much about myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, but the process was, I mean, after the initial, to do that, it was like, okay, this was happening. Um, I was kind of good. I mean, not good like in, doing the happy feet or nothing, but it was just like, okay, I can do this.
Right.
I can do this.
Right. Yeah, I definitely found myself, because I felt like I had lost myself, not just in those 2 years, the period that I call the decline, but after having the kids and being home, not focusing on I had always been career driven. I was one of those people that I've known since I was 8 years old what I wanted to do. And then there was just this large gap of not doing any of it. And I felt like everybody else was living and I wasn't doing much of anything. Like one day I stopped and I started doing this vision board, and you all probably remember, because I was reaching out to everyone like, have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? And they were like, yeah, yeah. And I was like, life is passing me by. There's so much that I haven't done. So immediately following that separation, that was what I set to do. Like, that's when I discovered the efficacy of vision boards and, making it a checklist of things you want to accomplish. I took pole dancing lessons, and yeah, and it wasn't really about anything other than a version of Marcia that I hadn't even explored or known. When I say, was there anything that you did for yourself? It's something like that. What did you do to find yourself again, or learn this new version of yourself that only comes after ending a marriage?
Learning how to move differently. And I still haven't mastered it. One of my girlfriends told me, Bailey, you still act like you're married. I said, what does that mean? She said, I want you to go out by yourself, go out to dinner by yourself, and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to this restaurant and, by myself, and I got up to go to the restroom. And I saw this guy, we caught eyes, and I turned my eyes real quick. You know how your brain thinks really quick? And I said, oh, that's what she's talking about. So I looked back at him, caught his eyes, and I smiled. And what I would do, because I was married, if we caught eyes, I would shift my eyes because I'm married. So I'm not going to do all of that with you. But
Yeah.
I'm not married anymore. So I can catch eyes with you and gaze at you and flirt with you and do all of that type of stuff. So it was a matter of me relearning how to be single. And again, I'm still not all the way there, because I can be guarded, because I deal with so much. I'm bombarded sometimes by men, and it can be overwhelming. So it's just like the guard goes up automatically, because it's like, okay, what's your angle? What do you want? Why are you talking to me? Why are you bothering me?
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about dating post-divorce.
For me, it was kind of like I was ready to be in them streets. Like, I wasn't like looking necessarily, and I'm just going to say, I wasn't looking for the next husband. I was looking for some fun. But, like, I didn't, and I don't know if it's because we were in such a decline for maybe like a few years before the actual separation. But like, I'd actually talked to my therapist about it. My outlook on dating has changed. In the early part of my separation / divorce, I was in a different mindset. But now it is like, okay, like what do you, what's your angle? Like what you said, like why are you here? you know, and to be honest, these guys aren't here. It seems like a lot of these guys just aren't here for anything.
Relationship
Like
wise.
yeah,
Okay.
like I'm looking for something substantial. Like I'm not looking for, just somebody I can, sex and then, go back home. Like I want to do real adult stuff. Like I want to go on vacations. I want to have real conversations, like deep conversations. I want to get into arguments, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so my mindset has changed, but I feel like I had to go through that early part. And part of that, I feel like, is because, to speak on what you had said earlier, Marcia, is that when me and my ex first started dating, I was in college. And then from college, pretty much we moved in together. And then that was it. Like I'd never
Yeah.
experienced the single life. So I think that's
I
another
mean,
reason why
I
maybe
had
I
some
got
college
into.
years though.
Yeah, well, see, I never had, because I think and I think when I was younger, because I more so grew up in a Christian household, I feel like my mindset was okay, if I went out with this guy 3 weeks, he's my boyfriend, as
Okay.
opposed to just,
I was
you
the opposite.
know, yeah, see, as opposed to just dating for fun or getting it, for that matter, even getting to know someone. So I never experienced any of that. Like I was just focused on, okay, you gonna be my husband, and we,
Mhm.
so I mean, I don't know. And also another thing that was to speak to well, this kind of goes back to the previous conversation, but like me finding myself actually, I think, happened before the separation, which probably propelled the separation, which propelled the divorce.
Wow.
Because it was the same thing where you get caught up in your family, and then you lose yourself. And I started doing things for myself. Um, I started doing outdoors thing. I started doing
Mhm.
fitness. I started doing all these things for myself, and then it kind of gave me a sense of, okay, what do you want? And it gave me a almost like a sense of confidence. Um, but yeah, going back to the dating thing, like it's like one of those things where you have to be patient, because I feel like these streets are rough. Like they are definitely not easy. But you just have to know what you want. You really have to make a declaration, because you can be swayed easily.
Oh yeah.
Um, you know, it's
And
yeah, it's
Swayed in
easy to
what
be
way?
swayed, but
Swayed in what way?
like if you like say if you're like, well, I'm not going to accept this from a guy or whatever, or I'm not going to deal with this, I'm not going to deal with that. But if he's coming, I mean, swinging, then it's kind of hard to like, I don't know if I can say that, but
Of course.
it's kind of, yeah, like, but if he's coming, with some stuff, you're like, you know what, maybe I'll just change it. And there are some things you should change, like, or consider changing, but there's some things you should honestly be honest with yourself and say, no, this is what I want for my man. And
Yeah.
for me, like now the line is, I need you to put in some effort. Like you're not just gonna be showing up, at my doorstep or anything like that. Like you got to put some effort into this. Like, and so just really just know what you really want. What's like red flags, and really respect those red flags, because a lot of times those red flags are there for a reason, because
Yeah.
that's how they are.
Well,
right.
speaking of red flags and women these days recognizing what they want and what they don't want, we went through this movement, I think, for the past probably 3 or 4 years, where we didn't want to, slut shame. We wanted women to have the same freedoms that men have to date, fluidly, and now they're like, okay, I think I'm over that. So now there
Yeah.
are fewer women on dating apps. They're saying it's mostly men on dating apps now
Yeah.
because yeah. So we're seeing a shift.
64% are men.
Yep.
64% of people on the apps are men.
Yeah.
But you know the funny thing about that, Marcia, though, it's I like older guys, and I mean, and I think at our age anyway, they're all old. But I mean, and it's not to say that the young people can't say this too, but obviously, the older you get, the more experiences you tend to have.
Yeah.
I know I'm a good person. I'm a good woman. I'm a good catch. I'm a good person. I have no intentions. I have intentions obviously to get married. I have no hidden agendas. One
Mhm.
thing my ex said about me, he said, Bailey, who you are when I met you is who you are today. I'm consistent through and through. Now, that's not to say you won't learn new things about me, but you're not going to wake up one day and be like, who are you and where did you come from and where's your representative? It's not. But I find the
Mm-hmm.
challenge is men have experienced so many problematic women
Yeah.
that when a
Yeah.
good one comes, they don't know how to deal with it. They're waiting for the catch. Like, okay, what's the catch? Because I'm not saying I'm too good to be true, but I will say I'm one of the few women, I'm not gold digging. I don't want you for financial security. I'm not with you just because you're attractive. Like, I'm not into the superficial things. At this point in my, not that I've ever been, but especially even more so now, it's like I want somebody that I can grow old with. And whatever you got going on right now, whether it's physical or not, that starts to dwindle. So I want to be able
Mm-hmm.
to know I can be intimate with you outside of the bedroom, that we can have stimulating conversations, that we can travel together and genuinely enjoy each other's company, that even if we're bantering, we're still respecting each other. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And that in itself, and obviously a man who has a relationship with God, and that in itself is so challenging. And it's like, I know, like, one of my main things is, like she said, I want to be able to go do things together. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I get guys who want to take me on trips, but I'm like, I don't know you. Like, I don't want to be with you like that. And the guys that I do, like, because I don't like a lot of people at all. So when I
Okay.
do find that person and they don't ever want to go anywhere or do anything, and it's just like, okay, so what you here for? Like, if we're not gonna go do stuff together and enjoy each other's company, you're not serving the purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was dating like? Because this is for you, Tiffany. This is prior to the social media boom and everybody, meeting, dating, interacting exclusively through apps. You probably still had to meet somebody at the gas station and meet somebody at the grocery store, meet somebody in the club,
Okay.
But what was that period like for you?
Yeah, I was meeting people out. So the thing is, like I said, I didn't really know people here. So of
Mhm.
course I was meeting men because it's just easier to meet men than it is to meet women.
Yeah.
So, I just started hanging out, going out to clubs, meeting men. So, you go to a club by yourself, you ain't gonna be by yourself long. You're gonna meet a man and y'all gonna hang out. He gonna buy you drinks, and that's gonna be your little boo thing for whatever period of time till he ain't your boo thing no more.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, dating was it was easy, it was easy to meet
Meeting a
people, but of
man.
course they were not substantial situations.
Yeah.
It was just very surface level type of things, so nothing really meaningful. As the time passed and as I guess I started to heal more and I got my footing and was in a better position to have something substantial, then I probably still, so I guess as I started to heal from the divorce, but then I started to feel the pressure of needing to connect with someone to get married, to have a baby, because now at this point I'm like in my early 30s, so I'm starting to feel that type of pressure. And that still wasn't a healthy position to be in for dating either, because now I'm dating through that lens, right? And then that comes with a whole nother set of pressure and an unhealthy motivation, to really try to connect with somebody. So that didn't serve me well either, right? That influenced me to kind of knock red flags out the way
Yeah.
and be full speed
Mhm.
ahead, because at the end of the day you need to just that good old fashioned dating advice that is useful no matter what stage you're in your life, be it single, be it freshly divorced, right? That you need to be healthy, you need to be healthy emotionally and mentally, right? And in a good space so that you can come into a situation where you're well and you're healed and showing up as your best self, right? And you're not, you don't want anything or you don't need anything from anyone. You're just looking for a partner, someone that you can spend time with, that complements you. You guys complement each other, that there isn't a void that you're trying to fill in any way, shape, or form. That's the healthiest scenario that you could be in when it comes to a romantic partnership. So, and that goes for any phase of life, obviously. But yeah, that did me a disservice for a long time.
Okay.
Just you feeling that pressure of, I need to hook up because I'm getting older.
Hmm. I can't really say I wasn't really able to experience dating separated because that was our agreement. That was the terms of our separation. It was that we were working on reconciliation. So I felt like people could sniff singledom on me. Like as I walked into the room, I felt like that people knew she was freshly separated. So I would actually wear a ring when I went out because I didn't want that kind of pressure for a while. And another thing that during that time I learned that I valued my friendships more, male friendships more, because that was something that I missed out on. I won't say I missed out on, but it's what you put away when you're married. I don't know. Did any of you have male friends? I used to have male friends growing up, and they were platonic friends. But so I like the male perspective, and it tends to be a male perspective that your husband isn't going to give you, or just just friendly conversations and talking trash. If that's not the kind of relationship that you have with your husband. So I think that is probably what I embraced during my separation was my friendships with coworkers and my friends growing up. I value male friendship. So I think that I still was able to get, it wasn't, dating in the traditional sense, but my lunches were purchased for me and my drinks were purchased for for me. And, I got to experience a little bit of it, I guess I could say. Yeah. All right. So let's move on to actually getting the groove back. I heard somebody mention intimacy. So what's that like? Did anybody circle back? Did anybody double back to their ex?
No.
I sure didn't. Heck to the no, no, no. Absolutely
No,
not.
not at all. Not at all.
Barely know how to cut a cord. That's for sure.
Yeah, look, and see, and Marcy, but see, that's the thing. I'm the type of person, I'm ride or die. And I will tell you, even though it may come off as nagging sometimes, I will tell you what I need. I will tell you. And I'm like, and it's almost to some degree, I'm not saying I'm pleading with you, but I'm trying to get you to see, like, okay, I'm letting you know you're not doing, because when I'm done, I'm done.
I mean, I feel like this should
Relationship
be
again?
yeah,
Does it
that's
have
what I was about to say.
was
Like, I'm
married?
really wondering if I can even find a relationship again. Like, it just feels like if one, it's hard for me to honestly, it's hard for me to like someone. I'll say that. Like, it's very hard. And then I'm kind of getting to the point where I am guarded, where, I do have this checklist of like, well, this is what, I'm very observant in the beginning. And, I'm seeing these things that you do, and I'm like, why is he doing it? And then if I don't like that he's doing it, I'm kind of like, well, I'm already turned off.
Girl, my
You
son
know?
tried to put me on a dating app. He said, "I'll fill out your profile if you want me to." I said, "Boy, if you don't go sit down somewhere."
Exactly. Like mine were seeing random men on the street and was like, "What about him?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. We not doing this."
Yeah.
But
So I wish that I could hear more stories of not needing to be in a relationship. And I guess that, you know, that opinion doesn't hold very much weight because I'm married. But I'm still
mhm,
who I am. I'm still who I am. And like we were saying before, I've never been the type that felt like I needed to be in a relationship. I dated
mhm.
plenty, but it was never an exclusive. I never needed to be called your girlfriend. I never wanted anyone that felt like they needed to be my boyfriend. It was just open dating. And I was comfortable with that and they were comfortable with that. I was always alongside someone, but it didn't always have to be a relationship. And I still feel that way now. Yes, I am married, but if I wasn't married, if we hadn't reunited, I was perfectly fine being single. I was perfectly fine. This is what I tell my mother, that why not? And just all the different women in my life who are not in relationships. Why does it have to be marriage? Why can't it be, that's my boyfriend. He lives in Georgia. He flies up once a month. I fly there once a month, and then I send him home.
Yeah,
Why can't
yeah,
it be that we get together, we add value to each other's lives, but we maintain our identity, our sense of self.
I don't need to be married, but I want to be married. And I think that's the difference. Like I'm single
yeah.
now. I've been single for the last 5 years. I'm doing fine. I don't need a man to complete me. But then the Bible does says it's not good for man to be alone.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and especially with social media, like a lot of these things on social media is trying to paint it like we don't need each other, and we honestly do. I'm not saying to just pounce on anything, which that's also the kind of the narrative too, but we do need each other at the end of the day. But it's just, do you want a relationship, or or what kind of relationship? What does that look like,
Yeah,
for you? It's okay, like I do want a relationship, but I'm good. Like I feel like, that like you have different relationships, like as far as like with your friends and all that stuff, that kind of fill in those gaps. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with wanting a relationship. There's nothing wrong with staying single. There's nothing wrong with having your man in, a whole nother state. It's okay for us to make the rules for ourselves. And I think that's the part of the reason, in marriages, we get so caught up in what society says that we're supposed to do in a marriage, as
yeah,
opposed to, okay, what do we really want? What do
right.
we want from each other? Like, what are we expecting? Are you a partner? Are you a lover? Are you this? Are you that?
And what do
So
you want
you really,
without
huh?
having to, and what do you want for yourself without
Exactly.
having to think
Exactly.
about putting the other person or their considerations first?
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
can I
and
say
Yeah.
something too? Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think it's also important to find happiness in whatever season that you're in, right? When you're single,
Mhm.
you don't want to be so fixated on trying to get married that you don't make the most
Right.
out of your single
Mhm.
life. Like there's something to be said
Yeah.
for
I
the
like
single
that.
life. The single life ain't all
Mhm.
bad. And the
It's
married
not.
life ain't all good either, right? So whatever season you're in,
Yeah.
while you're trying to take steps to get to the next step,
Hmm.
don't negate the beauty in the current season that you're in. That's all I want
Yeah.
to say.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
what parting words do you have? So if we are circling back to the top of this conversation and someone listening to this episode thinking, I feel like I need to make some changes. What does life look like for me after this change? What
I'll just
wisdom? What can you
I would
share?
just I would say this, put God first, and at any point you feel you deserve more, it means you do.
Mhm.
Okay.
I would say, and this was like, it's funny how, you get addressed with different questions, and sometimes you just like, it's kind of a stunner. But I remember running across a parent, and a parent of one of the kids at school. And, I told her I was recently separated, divorced, or whatever. And obviously she didn't want to know the details because it's just a random conversation. But she was like, the question that she asked me was, she was like, well, are you happy? And I mean, that's what I think it boils down to. If you make this transition, yes, it's going to be bumpy maybe in the beginning, but at the end of the day, do you feel like you'll be happy or happier?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
So seek happiness in any event, basically, like what Tiffany was saying. Anything else that we haven't covered that you think is relevant to this conversation?
One of the things I thought about that kind of helped me realize that something wasn't right. I remember thinking about the future. This is when we were separated. And I remember thinking about the future and thinking about, there's, I was looking at apartment buildings that were being built. And, I could see myself there and blah, blah. But one of the things that really stuck out from me seeing the apartment building is that I didn't see myself with him. Like I felt like, oh, wait a minute, I'm envisioning this. But the thought of planning this with him or him being by my side doing this didn't seem right. And that was just an automatic thought. Like I said, I was just driving down the street and I saw the apartment. And then I started thinking, wait a minute, you're not thinking about this with your husband.
Yeah.
And so that's something to kind of consider, like all the things, like even though you might miss companionship, but is it that you miss companionship or do you miss him? There is a difference. So if you can't see yourself doing these things with this person in the future, like I really want to do this with this person, not just with a body. I want to do this with this person. Or you just don't see that. Do you see yourself doing with that person? That's something to consider. Like, why? I mean, that was one of the turning points for me. And that came by accident.
So I'll chime in with my words of wisdom. I would say take your time. Don't make an emotional decision. Marriage is hard. And sometimes you may need to let it breathe. Sometimes you may need space, and sometimes the space may not take the form of a formal separation. Sometimes it may just need to take the shape of somebody taking a long weekend, maybe going somewhere and clearing your mind. Maybe it's a staycation. I don't know. But I would also suggest potentially, of course, take the route of counseling. But, one thing that what you don't want to do is get further down the road and be left with some what ifs and some woulda, coulda, shoulda. You just want to walk away with some assurance that you did your part. You did not, because you took a vow. Marriage is serious, is sacred, and you don't want to leave any cards on the table, so make sure that you've turned over every stone and that, it's not on in your own action. And it always takes two to tango, right? So if that other person isn't ponying up and doing their part, then it is what it is. You could wash your hands of it, but try to be patient and work through it as much as you can. And it's okay. Whatever you decide, it's your decision at the end of the day. It's not what mama think, daddy think, friends, or whatever the case may be. It's your life and you have to do what's best for you. Just make sure that it's a decision that you want to make, because it's a decision that you will have to live with.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
That's it.
Well, ladies, thank you all for this conversation.
Thank you.
And this probably won't be used for the podcast, but this is a shift. This is really going to be the first episode that I do that isn't going to be job related. It's not going to be
No.
career related or entrepreneurship related. This is going to be the first change after hardship or change after, that kind of episode. So thank you all for giving me what feels like an inaugural relationship episode. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your hell to the no's. And I think you are really going to help shape some decisions. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So I hope there were some takeaways in this conversation. I hope that being changed ever after doesn't paint a picture of doom and gloom. I hope those single streets and dating waterfalls don't make you feel like you have to stick to the rivers and lakes that you're used to. Just seek happiness first in whatever shape that happiness takes. Divorce, long-term or short-term separation, reuniting, negotiating new relationship terms as that relationship resets. Change ever after takes many shapes. So hopefully conversations like this add some perspective along the way. If you're enjoying the show and you've enjoyed past shows, please share an episode or several with a friend who can relate. And be sure to rate and review if you haven't already. As always, send your questions and feedback to me via DM on Instagram at itsmarciacork or email me at marcia@marciacork.com. Marcia is spelled Marceia. You'll find those details and all of the ways to follow, subscribe, and connect with me in the episode notes. Until next time, MCs. Bye-bye.